All right, welcome. Tonight we're going to have a fantastic presentation on homeschooling from a couple families who are some of my favorite people. But first, a couple of announcements. We have our board meeting for Will County Progressives coming up next Monday. Our board meetings are now open to current members. So if you're paid up, you're welcome to come and sit in on those board meetings. And they are here at our office, which is right down the hall. We also have some petition packet workshops coming up. Petitions will be available in a couple of weeks for whatever you're running for. So Larry is going to be running some how to do petitions, basically, for the various offices and what you need to do and all of that. So Friday, Saturday, and Sunday next weekend, the 25th, 26th, and 27th, 7 p.m. Friday, 5 p.m. Saturday, and 2 p.m. Sunday, and that's all on our website calendar. Also, the Will County Resistance Fair is coming up. Jackie Trenier and some other folks up in Bolingbrook are hosting that. It's a great opportunity to come and see other organizations that are part of the resistance and see who you might want to team up with or who's doing work that you might want to get involved with. And that's 10 to 4 at the Holiday Inn in Bolingbrook. And again, that information's on our website.
We'll be there.
We'll be there. Recruitment committee meeting Sunday, 8/27, immediately following the petition workshops. So if you've signed up to be part of the precinct and Progressive's recruitment efforts, or even if you haven't, we might be recruiting you. We will be sitting down and getting the plan together for what we're going to be doing in terms of that precinct committee recruitment in Will County. We've already begun, but we're going to be fine-tuning our efforts into a well-oiled machine. So be there, be square. That's Sunday following the petition workshops. I have a couple folks I want to introduce before our speakers. We have Denise Mushrow-Rumchak, who is a candidate for the Will County Clerk. Denise, did you want to say a couple words? You can come on down.
Hello, Will County Progressives. Thank you for having me come up here this evening. My name is Denise Mushrow-Rumchak, and I am a candidate for Will County Clerk. I am excited about this new endeavor that I'm embarking on, and I've been meeting all kinds of very, very nice people throughout the community, just telling them my story. So I'm just very quickly want to tell you why I believe that I am the best candidate. I have been a public servant for over 21 years. I currently serve as the Lockport Township Clerk in Lockport Township. I was deputy clerk for 21 years. So I love my community, I love Will County, and I'm going to move forward with my career. So I thank you all for having me tonight. Will County Progressives is a wonderful organization. When I talk to people in the community, everybody just really boosts it up and are so happy that we have such a hard-working organization here in Will County. So kudos to all of you, and keep up the good hard work, and I look forward to the next 6 months. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Denise. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
Now I want to introduce Clarice Hearn, who's going to quickly do a little update on what's happening with the Our Revolution single-payer legislative strategy. Oh, Clarice.
Thanks, Rebecca. Not just single payer, but the whole Our Revolution People's Platform. And could you pass these around, because this has the things that I'll talk about tonight. And I'm a little lame, so excuse me for limping and for sitting on this table. I was so happy to hear last week that Will County Progressives has become an official member of Our Revolution. And a few weeks ago, I had attended or participated in a webinar on our revolution, and to find out what they were doing legislatively. And they have the Summer for Progress program with the People's Platform. And what I just passed out shows you the things that are on the People's Platform. And what I'd like to do is very briefly just tell you what these different House resolutions are. And what they have done is they've established a campaign for people to go to Democratic members of Congress. They're forgetting about the Republican ones, guess why? And anyway, to go to their Democratic members of Congress to get them to sign on to the People's Platform and or individual sign as co-sponsors of individual pieces of legislation if they're not able to sign up for the whole thing. And if you go to ourrevolution.com and go under Summer for Progress, you can find more information. What they have done is they've taken through the entire United States all of the Democratic members of Congress and listed which of these different House bills the various members have signed up for. And so I went and checked on the Illinois ones, obviously, and so if you're in a Republican congressperson's district, I don't have any information on that because they're not working on the Republicans, but Democrats I do. And not surprisingly, Jan Schakowsky is up there with 100% support for all of these. She signed on as co-sponsor for all of these. She and I think two others, two from California maybe. Anyway, in I'm in Congressman Foster's district, and he has signed on as co-sponsor for H.R. 15, Raise the Wage Act, and for H.R. 2840, Automatic Voter Registration, and H.R. 3227, Justice is Not for Sale. So he has signed on to co-sponsor those so far. I've been working on him on single payer because that's my particular issue, but so far, no good. I understand that some of you are in Lipinski's district. Who's in Lipinski's district?
I used to be. I mean, I serve in Lockport Township, but I live in Crest Hill.
Okay, well, what I can tell you about Lipinski is he has 0%. He has not signed on anything at all, but I know, I don't know how much people are working on him.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What are you trying to accomplish with Foster for single, say that again.
I personally was working on single payer health care, Medicare for all, improved Medicare for all. That's my issue.
Okay.
But and I've met with him on that, but not on this other comprehensive issue that includes the People's Platform. So the other thing I would like, the way they're working this is they have lists of people from all of the different congressional districts, and they're trying to link us together. So I've been contacted by a couple people in my legislative district, and they want to deliver petitions in person to Foster's office next week while we're still on break. So I said I would do that, and I'm looking for 1, 2, 3 people in Foster's district who will go along with me, and I need to get an appointment to go in there. Okay, I got 1, and we're 2. Okay, so you know, the more we have, the stronger we are. So we can talk after about that. But I just want to briefly let you know what these issues are. The first is the Medicare for All Act, which it has been introduced by John Conyers, and it would establish a privately delivered, publicly financed universal health care system. And I think people have been hearing a lot about Medicare for All recently. I don't think I need to say a whole lot about it. I think you know what it's about. And it would be funded through a modest payroll tax on employers and employees, a financial transaction tax, we like that, and higher taxes on the wealthiest Americans. We like that. I like that. I'm thinking you like that. Okay, and then there's the College for All Act. That's been introduced by Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah, and it would eliminate tuition and fees for four-year public colleges and universities for families making up to $125,000 a year. So if you're making more than $125,000, your family, then you would be required to pay something towards the, I don't know how that works out, but to pay something towards the tuition. And community colleges would be tuition and fee free for everybody. That's what that one is. The Raise the Wage Act, this one really blew my mind when I looked at it, because we're talking about getting to a $15 an hour pay. Well, listen to this. This was introduced by Bobby Scott of Virginia and Keith Ellison of Minnesota. It would raise the federal minimum wage to $9.25 this year and increase it over the next 7 years so that by 2024 it would be $15 an hour. Well, I got to tell you, that sounds pretty feeble to me, but that's, I mean, in 2024, my God. Well, but that's.
Without it, where will you be in 2024?
What?
Without it, where will you be in 2024?
Well, yeah, maybe 925. Yeah. Okay. Then there's HR 771, Each Woman Act, and this is has been introduced by Barbara Lee of California, and it requires the government to ensure coverage for abortion care in public health insurance programs, including Medicaid, Medicare, and the Children's Health Insurance Program. And it would also prevent the federal government from prohibiting, restricting, or otherwise inhibiting insurance coverage of abortion care by state or local governments or by private health plans. This one's going to be a tough one to get people to sign on to, and I think, depending, Jan Schakowsky can safely sign on to that. It's going to be a tough one for people, for a lot of the representatives. The Automatic Voter Registration Act, introduced by Representative David Cicilline, I don't know where he's from, would require each state to ensure that people who register with their DMV, either for a driver's license or an ID card, would automatically be registered to vote. We like that one. I like this a lot. This is the Justice is Not for Sale Act. I think you will like it too. It was introduced by Representative Raul Grijalva. Is that how he pronounces it? Grijalva? And of Arizona. And it would bar the federal government and state and local jurisdictions from contracting with private corporations to run prisons and detention facilities.
Yeah.
And it also would make some changes to immigration law so that there's not this big collection of immigrants that are incarcerated. And then the last one is the Inclusive Prosperity Act, which was introduced by Keith Ellison, and it would raise money to invest in our economy by taxing Wall Street financial transactions. The bill would tax stocks at stock transactions at 0.5%, and for derivatives and other investments, 0.1% to 0.005%. So, this is one of the things that progressives are looking at, is that as a means of supporting some of these pieces of legislation. So that's what I wanted to let you know about. And if you go to ourrevolution.com and look under the, what did I tell you, Summer for Progress, you can probably find that information.
Doris, can you include me on those mailings or information too?
Put you on.
Yeah, you just keep me in the loop on these two.
Oh,
Yeah,
sure. Glad to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, one more quick announcement before we get started. We're going to have a candlelight vigil after the social tonight in solidarity with in Charlottesville. Hate has no home here. We do not support prejudice, Nazis, white supremacists, any of that. And we'll be having a candlelight vigil on the steps after. Please feel free to join us. So now, the great stuff. I want to introduce a couple of families who have impressed me greatly over the time that I've known them. Some of the most socially conscious, progressive, and caring people I think I've ever met. And they, for various reasons, have chosen to homeschool their children, who are also here today. And they're going to share their experience with us. Not something you often hear in progressive circles. A lot of people are like, oh, homeschooling, I thought that was the right wing did that. No, it's not actually just the right wing. Lots of people are into homeschooling for various reasons. And so they, brave souls that they are, have agreed to answer some of those questions as well. But we are all very kind, respectful audience members here. We're not going to beat them up because they are individual people who happen to be, as I mentioned, some of my favorite folks on the planet. And they're going to share their own experiences with us, which I have been incredibly excited. And I personally have worked hard to get them here. They're here because I wanted them here. So I'm on in that. And you guys are in for a real treat. So I want to introduce Chris and Mike McGuire and Regina and Greg Orasco, who are going to share their experiences with homeschooling, and also who could do it. Can I do it? Is it hard? Can anybody do it? And a number of other issues as well. So with that, very
Well, we weren't nervous until that introduction. We also have another homeschooling family with us that we invited for support. Our people, the Menchakas, are here with all their children. So you guys are welcome to come on up and share your comments with us. So from there, I don't know how you feel after that introduction. So anyway, so I'm Mike, and that's Chris, and our son Aiden. Raise your hand, Aiden. There you go. So I'll just introduce ourselves a little bit, and then, I don't know, we're just winging this thing really, so bear with us all.
We did email each other though.
We did do that. So Chris and I and Aiden, we've been homeschooling since the beginning of Aiden's educational journey, 14 years now. He's 14 years old. So that's our thing. Well, do you guys want to introduce yourselves first as well, and then we'll keep. They all know you.
They all know.
I don't. Sure.
I'm Regina.
I'm Greg.
Greg and Morgan sitting here. So
We're all members of Will County Progressives.
Yeah.
Been here for a while. Morgan's been homeschooled
Everyone,
since
welcome, yeah.
after 3rd grade.
Yeah.
And I think a little bit of what we're going to talk about is kind of, homeschooling. What is it? Why homeschool? Some of the benefits of homeschooling, tips for homeschooling, and maybe a little bit about our story. So that's just a brief intro as far as what we're going to try and cover, and then we'll open it up to any questions, and we'll share our experiences. And maybe, we won't embarrass Morgan. We'll try not to, but we might.
Feel free to, I don't know how you feel, but feel free to ask Morgan questions if you have questions for her too.
Okay, let me ask you questions in between questions. All right. You guys want to say anything about who you are? Or? I don't know what role you want to play in this presentation.
I would love to play. I don't know what you do.
All right, the antagonist.
Well, we're probably the largest homeschooling family here in the room. We have 4 children. My oldest, Madison, is 17. Abby is 15. Maya's 12, and Alex is 10. And we started homeschooling a couple months before Madison was about to start kindergarten. So it's been 12 years now that we've officially started, for no particular reason.
Well, I wanted to offer 3 disclaimers before we begin, at least from my family's perspective. we do not represent the voices or perspectives of all homeschoolers, okay? You know, there's so much diversity, of course, amongst homeschoolers and why they do what they do and whether they call it homeschooling or something else. So we're just sharing our perspective, our stories. Second disclaimer, we are not legal or political experts on the matter. So there you go. It's not even really much on my radar, maybe more on your radar, I don't know, but
No.
I don't think too much about that kind of
Not at all.
stuff. And like our son, we are learning all the time. So we've had plenty of false starts. You know, we tried one thing, we tried another thing, and you know, and we're just kind of making our way through and you know, learning all the time. So those are the disclaimers, whatever that's worth. When I was thinking about this presentation, I was like, geez, what do they want to know? I mean, I think we're on the same page as far as what we want to talk about. But one thing I thought might be helpful is like a quick kind of history of what homeschooling is. And I didn't know a whole lot about the history of this. I'm like, I got to prepare for this presentation. And then I went down a rabbit hole of figuring out what the history of homeschooling was. And that's probably far more than you want to know. But I'll give you some of the highlights as I understand them. You know, the idea of education being home-based, of course, goes all the way back to the beginning of this country, colonial times. And I'm just going to skip through the highlights real quick here. You know, that continued as in large part through the middle of the 19th century when the common schools, the kind of the one-room school homes came on the scene. And then even then, at that point, school was very much limited. Of course, all grades in one schoolhouse. The school years are very short. The number of hours in the classroom were, you know, only a few perhaps each day. This continued through the middle of the 20th century. Of course, I mean, from there, we saw, of course, governments greater control of education as public education took hold. And this really took off as more and more immigrants came into our country. And I think in large part to help create this sense that all Americans from every background or persuasion would get some sort of common experience. In my understanding, the things I've read through the years is that it was, in some ways, it was a way to sort of shape a so-called American identity or shared values amongst Americans. Public school had a large role to play in that. And so by the all through the 20th century, of course, the big boom of public high schools and so forth after World War II, you have these gigantic schools with thousands of students. And by the mid 20th century, by 1970, homeschooling, as might have been thought about before, was pretty much dead. There really wasn't what we would call homeschooling. But then there was this emergence of an intentional homeschooling movement in the 1970s by the likes of John Holt and his followers, and he presented this idea of homeschooling as a way of sort of liberating children from the institution of schooling. His popular newsletter at the time was Growing Without Schooling, and this idea of like liberation from schooling is today known as the unschooling movement. Okay, so just going real quick, two more quick historical points here. Sorry, I found this really interesting when I was like reading. Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah,
So do we. Keep going.
Yeah, in the 1980s, there was this whole like kind of. I mean, I love unschoolers, but it's kind of a hippy dippy kind of thing, right? Coming out of the late 60s into the 70s, and but there was a real shift in that in the 1980s where Christian fundamentalists and the evangelical really took hold of the dominant rhetoric around homeschooling. So then we saw that. And today, here we are. Today, there's a great diversity. Okay, so that's why it's not like to have an image of who homeschoolers are, what their families are like. It's so diverse. People do it for so many different reasons across the political spectrum.
And if I can just interject, I mean, that's a common myth that it's like either the hippy-dippies, as you mentioned, or kind of that right-wing kind of like
evangelical,
right? The religious fanatics and stuff like that. So I mean, that's usually a myth that's out there. So.
Right. When we started homeschooling, like I probably believed that up until about a week before I decided to actually homeschool. It's not like there's people who like, oh, I wanted to homeschool since birth, and they've always known, and that was not our case at all. Like my oldest daughter went to preschool. I was outside her for kindergarten, and then I had some friends that homeschooled, and they started talking to me about it, and I started reading and made a decision and realized it was not what I thought it was, and went ahead and did it. So
So there's lots of myths out there.
Yeah.
I got some fast numbers, and then we're going to get personal and talk about our stories. I think it's probably more interesting. But I have some 2012 numbers. They're a little bit dated, but according to the U.S. Department of Education in 2012, 1.8 million there are 1.8 million homeschoolers in America. That was up from 1989 when there was just 850,000. So 3.4% of all school-age children in 2012 were homeschooled, as opposed to 1.7% in '89. But some estimates put it much higher because there's not mandatory reporting, as to whether or not you homeschool. So by some estimates, it could be as many as 3.5 million children who are home educated, with anywhere to 3 to 8% growth per year since 2012. So there's a lot of people doing it, and according to the Department of Education, reasons for homeschooling is based on some data that they put together. 91% said they were concerned about the educational environment, which is why they chose to homeschool. 77% said they had a desire to provide moral instruction. 74% said they had dissatisfaction with academic instruction of the public school option. 64% said they did so for religious purposes. 44% said they desired a non-traditional approach to education. 16% said they wanted to better accommodate the special needs of their children. 15% said they were homeschooling to better deal with physical or mental health issues, and then 7% other. So that's some of the context maybe, but now we probably should get personal. It's far more interesting. So I'm going to stop talking and let you guys explain maybe why you homeschool, and then we could do that as well. Sure.
Well, we never intended to homeschool. We built in a new neighborhood with a brand new school, and Morgan, we didn't do preschool. We just did a lot of stuff together with the forest preserves and that kind of thing. Kindergarten was really good, and then came first grade. Morgan did go through third grade, but we could see that things weren't really working out. Morgan's teachers agreed actually that she should be homeschooled. I give them a lot of credit. I was very close to them, and them admitting that and saying that to me is, phenomenal, because the principal did not feel the same way at all.
Those are more off the record comments, though.
Yeah. Morgan is highly gifted with a nonverbal learning disability. So to school, she was this really nice, sweet, quiet child who didn't really engage. And then as things kind of went on, just as an example, she would, like if they said, if she didn't know the teacher, like she was reading chapter books by the middle of first grade. But then when she tested it at the beginning of second grade, it went back to very basic, like if you give a mouse a cookie, because she won't do something for someone she doesn't know. So we kind of were like, well, why don't we talk to each other, work with each other on stuff. And we did a personality test, Myers-Briggs, and found Morgan matches less than 1% of people. So obviously it's going to be difficult to accommodate that. When they did the COGAT test at the end of second grade, she scored 99, 98, and 35. Yeah, so the school didn't seem to have a problem with the 35. And why is it? Oh, it's just the way she learns. So I did a lot of research into that. Her second grade teacher was wonderful about working with her. She would give her harder stuff to do, wanted her to use the dragon so she didn't have to write. I was like, no, she still has to write. But she would do, like, if you were supposed to read a story and write about it, she wrote on the paper, if you want to know what it's about, read the book. Not meaning it in a, trying to be, it's just the way her mind works. Well, why would I read this book and then tell somebody about it? If you want to know, just read it, So I was constantly in there fighting for her grades. There was one, it was what is space, and it was like the atmosphere, circles of light, and two that made no sense. Well, she put circles of light, it's wrong. Manuka has a 94A, so you're already at a B. So I asked her, why did you put that? And she goes, because the area around the earth is the atmosphere, but when you look out into the sky, you see, the Cat's Eye Nebula and the various galaxies, naming them, and they look like circles of light. Okay, so I go in to argue, to discuss, and I was told that she was thinking too high. Really? And I'm like, so can we correct that? Well, no, there's only one right answer. She's thinking too high. Okay, so you're going to lower her grade because she's too smart. Yes. So obviously at that point we decided it was probably about time to pull her. I mean, then the teachers tried to accommodate. She got to draw pictures on her spelling tests and stuff so that she, when she was bored. But we pulled her after 3rd grade. The first day, because I fit school very well when I went. So they only teach to really 2 intelligences, 2 types. And Maureen's neither one of those. Actually, her teacher in 3rd grade also sent me, she used Morgan for a study on multiple intelligences in college, and she said she learns no way that is taught in school. So she's natural, obviously, naturalistic and interpersonal. So we geared our school towards horses, nature, you know, making sure that she could use her imagination as much as possible, critical thinking skills. It was very unschooling. We did a lot of trips. There were a lot of, you know, free things you can do. She had, being gifted, the executive function part of the brain develops much slower. So there were times when we're in, you know, she's 10 years ahead in one thing and 6 years behind in another one. So it's, you know, it's hard for schools to accommodate that. So we found a lot of different things to do, and through time, like TED Talks, there's a TUI group in Naperville. Illinois has a gifted place, Chicago sang, and there's a lot. One of the things that I went to a seminar and luckily found out, and took a really big chance on, because Morgan wouldn't write a damn sentence. Nothing. And the way her brain works is she could spell anything verbally, but might spell the same word 3 different ways on paper. So learning to strengthen instead of beating kids down for what they don't know. I mean, I would say know your child, learn your child. I can't tell you how many things I have I'm trying to learn. And they're gonna switch as you learn. But learning your child and gearing things toward that individual person is the most important thing. So I went to this, and Guilt-Free Homeschool was a group that was there. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They never made their kids write because they didn't like to write, they weren't good at writing, but they read all the time. And Morgan read book after book after book. I mean, Shakespeare was like her favorite in 3rd grade, or, you know, Tale of Two Cities was her favorite in 4th grade or whatever. So
we had our own library at home with all the books we bought.
Lots of classics and whatever she wanted to read about, a lot of horse stuff, goats. And she decided at 14, all of a sudden to write a novel. She's written 2 novels, amazing poems, and had we pushed the envelope, she probably would still not be writing a sentence. So, you know, it's the chances, deciding which ones you're going to take. But I think, too, it allows you to do a lot more things. You know, Maureen did beekeeping, took Chinese. We went tracking wolves last year in Minnesota. The Sandhill Crane stuff, she goes to protests and knows her political stuff and how her country works. Argonne offered a full day for the 125 top 8th grade girls in Chicago area, and Morgan was chosen for that. She was a Prairie Ranger at Fermilab and took classes at Fermilab. She's going to take physics at Fermilab. We did Riverwatch. She worked at Neighbor Settlement, teaching others about prairie and the antebellum times dressed in period costume. So I think it gives you a lot of time for other, you know, other things that are kind of more learning experiences, all the traveling that we've been able to do. I don't know, it's just been a lot of fun. I love it. And now that we're in high school, and with my dad being sick, because I actually made up the curriculum. So if I was on the train to Chicago, I'm reading about Mendel or, you know, Darwin or Socrates, so that I could make up what I was going to teach her, make up, you know, her tests or whatever we were doing. And we found Global Villages, which is part online. She has teachers, but I'm her teacher also. Her teachers are in Virginia, Tennessee, and California. But there was a syllabus, and I was all like, whoa. And it took us months to be able to do it, but it was a good transition. She's got straight A's. They love her. She's doing wonderfully. She is she feels okay giving her real opinion. And, you know, always taught her about strong women. I want her to be very strong. She probably has a pretty good mentor in that department. I think finding mentors too, more into photography with people. Dr. Diab at University of St. Francis let her help them with forensics camps, you know, things like that. It just gives you a lot more leeway to do what you want. But actually what she's doing now is more stringent than what we did. We did find out that they allow us to make changes, so we've made a lot of changes. Yeah, I just sent in like an alternative form for what we want to do for school. They've never said no. I mean, one thing was she's supposed to read Night by Elie Wiesel, and we just can't do that. So she read, I don't know if you're familiar with, They Thought They Were Free, which was a man who interviewed 10 actual Nazis. Yeah. And she's writing about those people and how they kind of got caught up in it, and that, you know, that kind of thing. World literature, she learned about Nobel Peace Prize winners and you know, just amazing things like that. And what we joke about now is the most probably stringent school she's ever going to go to is college. You know, which how many people can say that? But colleges too are very, very interested in homeschool kids now. You know, they want homeschool kids because the ability to learn more, they have more life experience. You know, when we go places, my mom used to take her to things too, and we would joke that she was the only one there under 75. But hey, you know, she went and learned. Sandwich Opera House has really cool programs. I would say that it's called never homeschool, because you're never ever home if you're homeschooling. And you know, one thing that I learned early on when reading and talking to people is lots of coffee and lots of wine. That's how I'm out of school. You start the day with coffee and you end the day with wine. But that's pretty much how we got here, and you all know her, so I think it worked.
Did you want me
You can
to tell our story?
Tell our story.
Well, I think we always kind of knew we wanted to homeschool. My sister-in-law homeschooled my niece for just 1 year, and then she kind of gave up. And I think mostly because she never found a community to really feel at home with and stuff. But we were always intrigued by it. So when we had Aiden, we kind of knew we were going to always homeschool. He did go to preschool for 1 year, a couple hours twice a week. Both Mike and I are college professors, so he was at Mike's school. And I think it was mostly because he was an only child, and there was this common myth out there about socialization, and he was 4, so we're like, okay, I guess we have to do this just to see. But a lot of times I would pull him out of there, and we would go over to Little Red Schoolhouse or to Lake Catherine or to the forest preserves and go explore and do things because they loved nature at that time. So we would just kind of, I hated seeing him like in this little room, not really doing what he loved to do. He didn't look happy there. So we would go out, and we decided to just keep continuing to pursue homeschooling. And one of our very first field trips when he was 4, we met this wonderful family here, and we've been friends ever since. So for the last 10 years, we've been friends, and we found, I mean, and you've talked about this a little bit, the resources out there, and like you're never home. We go on field trips. We're part of a co-op, and we're part of a group of other homeschoolers. So we have a group of people. We're not isolated at home. We are never home, just like you said. It's really uncommon if we're home for one whole full day. So I don't know, Aiden explores different things. He's able to pursue his own interests. We kind of have tried different methods. We started off probably as unschoolers, and I think we still kind of follow that, but I kind of call ourselves child-led or student-led or person-led learning, because I want Aiden to be able to pursue any interest that he wants. I don't want him to be in a classroom where the teacher is teaching about a certain subject and then they move on and he's still wanting to learn more about that subject. I want him to be able to pursue those interests and keep that curiosity going. So we always wanted to be able to kind of keep that, continue that, and have that, you know, flourish, basically. So Aiden pursues a lot of different things. And like Regina was saying, I mean, he's been able to take classes with lots of different people. He associates with like, he loves art, so he takes classes with a famous artist and stuff like that in the local area, not, worldwide. but I mean, he's able to pursue things that he wants to pursue and meet people that are in those different interest areas. And we really try really hard to try to find, avenues for him to pursue different interests that he has. So that's where we are. And we have looked in, I mean, there are boxed curriculum and there are people who do definitely school at home. We are not like that. And I mean, we do know people like that, but we are not like that. But you can get packages of curriculum that get shipped to your house and you follow along this curriculum in your school and your kids do that curriculum and they, work through all of that. But we feel that it's good to explore different things. We have curriculum in our house. We have different things and we have different resources available. But we try to be really eclectic, I guess, in our approach. So, do you want to add more? I'm sure I'm forgetting lots of things.
Well, just going back to the experience of having Aiden in preschool for that 1 year, and it's a college where he was taking the preschool, so it's also a place for student teachers to learn and so forth. So they have an observation room, and I remember going there, looking through the one-way glass where you could see the kids doing their thing, but they can't see you. And how I barely recognized him there because he was so quiet, and I think the best word is like sedate. He's just like sitting there, staring off, disinterested in all these whatever was going on, and the activities. I mean, it's not a bad preschool. I don't want to knock it, but it was a whole lot of learning things that are important to learn, I suppose. But it was so much like stand in line, all these kinds of things, and. It just didn't look like him, and it wasn't the way that I could imagine him spending, the next 12 years of his life or whatever, because outside of that environment, he was, so energetic, like dancing, asking questions, wanting to do all these different activities and explore and investigate and truly curious about the world around him, but observing him in that preschool setting, I didn't see any of that. And we're teachers and we see students and a lot, Chris and I, and we tend to overthink things perhaps, but there are certain things that we didn't want him to learn in a traditional school setting either. Like I didn't want, in my observations as a student coming up through school and as a teacher, I feel like much of what the way the purpose of school is talked about in schools, at least the ones that I've experienced, is about how are you going to contribute to our labor force? Like what do you want to be when you grow up, and so that you can consume certain things. What I mean? It's about consumption. It's about production, and I know that that's of course very important, but I don't think that should be the reason why we're learning. And so I wanted to kind of find a way to not engage in what I saw as a place of learning about materialism and consumption and that sort of thing. I also wanted to avoid gender socialization. I didn't want him to, have to learn from an institutionalized setting what it means to be whatever gender one might be, and to be like, boys over here, girls over there. It's like you have to choose, and the boys do certain things and the girls do other kinds of things. And those are things I wanted to avoid as well as age kind of groupings. Why can't he be friends with a 65-year-old man or whatever, what I mean? Like, why does he just have to hang out with kids his own age? Or, not that he has a lot of 65-year-old friends, but I mean, the point is he could. And when he was out of that setting, he was mixing with people of all ages, of
and nowhere
many
in
genders.
the world, I mean, people oftentimes talk about real world like that. They're not getting real world experience, but nowhere in any other type of setting except for school situations are you with people of the exact same age all the time.
And
from
same
6 to 7.
socioeconomic, because
Right.
it's your neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Real quick, Mark has actually been a great mentor for Morgan too. I just wanted to put that.
I also have a problem with grades, and because I feel like so many children, not all, just what I've observed, so I'm just trying not to be overly general here, but hang a lot of their self-esteem on whatever letter grade that they're receiving, and they equate that with learning, and it's not learning. You know, that's just some
Right.
subjective assessment of how you did on that very flawed test.
Or
or
not
whatever.
subjective.
Right?
No, it's this way.
Exactly. So these were things that early on I was thinking through this process. So, and we just really wanted to cultivate a natural love of learning and let Aiden learn about things, set his own direction in many ways, and at his own pace. You know, like Aiden is a strong-willed person, and so like I remember like trying to like teach him things when we were trying to figure out how to do homeschooling, and you know I'm like trying to teach him some math or something, and he would like run out of the room. He's like, "Mom, Dad's trying to teach me something again." You know, I didn't like it being imposed upon him, you know. But if you left him alone, he would find something that he loved, and he would dig so deeply into it. And you know, he's like an expert in all kinds of things that may not be, I mean, I think have real world value, but may not be particularly valued in a school setting at, you know, in whatever grade he might have been in at that time. You know what I mean? So to allow somebody to dig deeply into something, I think is a great benefit of homeschooling, because the bell doesn't ring and the learning doesn't end. You know, they can keep doing it.
And they can throw the directions away from that Lego thing and make whatever the hell they want to do.
Exactly. So there's the myths Chris was talking about, and we're all, I think, talking a little bit about the socialization myth, so
Yeah.
maybe we put that one to rest. I think two more myths that maybe we could talk about is the I'm not a teacher myth. I could never homeschool. Maybe we want to talk about that one. And then and the one that I'll just mention real quickly now, the idea that the myth, I think it's a myth to say that, you know, all homeschoolers are prodigies, you know what I mean? Or all homeschoolers are academically deficient. You know, I feel like these are two myths, you know, which sometimes I understand where it comes from, you know, to have to say, look at all these great homeschoolers who've done all these great things, famous people. That's great and super important and valuable. But I also think it puts a tremendous amount of pressure on homeschoolers, you know what I mean? It's like, we're all just people and kids or whatever, you know, growing and learning. So those I think are myths that maybe we could put aside. But maybe an important one is the I'm not a teacher myth. Do you guys want to talk about that? Like, anybody can homeschool. Do you believe that? I believe anybody can
Anybody
homeschool.
can
Yeah, well, I'm not a
Just about
teacher.
anybody.
Suzanne, a teacher.
Yeah.
I'm just bossy.
I think we've learned through the whole process, through the whole homeschooling, is that there's so many things that you didn't learn in school that you're learning today by doing all these other miscellaneous assignments.
Did
and
you know
looking
that the
for-
West was actually, they used camels to settle the West? This is a
See,
fact.
something you
Didn't
learn
learn it, did
about
you?
homeschooling because
It's
you're
like-
researching and investigating different things.
The last
And-
thing was 1943.
Exactly. Not only are you learning new things, but you're harking back and, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So it's keeping you sharp, it's keeping you in tune to what's going on. Different things, you're finding different interests that you read some, wow, that's really cool. Maybe I should start checking it myself and look at what I can do. But one of the benefits to homeschooling, when we first started this whole process, after third grade, I wasn't really on board. I didn't think it was a good idea. I thought it was silly that we should attempt to do homeschooling when the school was right there. It was 2 blocks away. We built a home to move there, right? But at the end of the day, it comes down to what's best for the child. And school was not. And this has been, I guess there's been bumps in the road. There have been challenges, but it's also been very rewarding because we've seen her grow.
So what are you doing?
And that's a part too, I mean, like, I enjoy being with Aiden, and we enjoy being as a family, and we're able to travel and do a lot of different things that you might not be able to do if your children were in school all day long. So, and I, like you said, I mean, it's nice to see them grow, to see them change, to see them, you know, explore these different things, to see them develop in different ways. And if they were in school for 6 to 7 hours every single day for 5 days a week, you wouldn't see all of those things. So, right, and coming home, doing homework, and then not having time for other activities that they want to do. So,
Getting caught up in a lot of the petty stuff that goes on in
Right,
school and
right.
peer pressure and everything else.
I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about the computer thing, but, you know, she never had the thing in the car. I mean, it was, we played games when we went on trips, or we gave her the bingo when she found the stuff and had a new, you know, toy or something that she would play with, or you know, and I think that putting those computers away and getting your butt outside is what you need the kids to do. Yes.
Yeah, I found
Well,
some
you guys-
interesting things too.
You guys are doing a great job. What happens to the homeschooler who is not? Is there some regulation or testing? Or?
None.
So-
Illinois is the easiest state to homeschool. You basically, I told the school I'm homeschooling and that was that.
Yeah.
Every state has different regulations.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some, if you're interested, there is a specific statute for Illinois homeschooling where if they wanted to, they could send a truant officer to your home and make sure that your kid was receiving, proper instruction, et cetera. That's never happened. Also,
you just keep yourself there.
also looking at here's some statistics on homeschooling. On average, homeschooled students outperform their peers on standardized tests. Homeschooled graduates are more active and involved in their communities. They're more involved in civic affairs. They're very happy with life, and that's compared to the general U.S. population. A homeschooler's ACT and SAT scores are higher than those in public schools, or the students in public schools. Home-educated college students perform as well as or better than a traditionally educated student. Most homeschoolers have a GPA that's higher than regular students. Graduation rates show a higher disparity between homeschoolers, 66.7% graduation rate versus 57.5% for traditional students. That was onlinecollege.org from a September 2011 article. Harvard, MIT, Duke, Yale, and Stanford want homeschoolers. These schools don't just accept homeschooler students grudgingly. They do everything they can to get them in the door. They recognize that homeschoolers are often better prepared for college than kids that go to a typical public school. And many colleges will accept a portfolio of a child's work as opposed to transcripts. So just some things to think about.
You're talking about the kids that maybe fall through the cracks, is what you're
Well,
kind of thinking about, and.
What if the parents get lazy and the kid
Right.
just plays video games?
Well, what I say to that is that there's all kinds of kids on the spectrum, like the super smart ones and then there's the kids that may not be doing so well. But unless it's like an abuse type situation, no parent is going to keep their kids home. I mean, realistically, if they're not going to actually go through the process of homeschooling their child, why would they not just send them to the public school and get them out of their hair all day? If public school's free, what do you think I would want them there all day? If I had a choice to not, and I didn't want to do what they were supposed to be doing. So, I just don't think it happens very often.
I think there amongst a lot of homeschoolers, especially if they're just starting out, like young parents starting out with the decision to homeschool, there's a lot of anxiety. Am I doing the right thing? How will I know? I don't know at some point. And that's a real anxiety. I think part of the anxiety comes from this fear that will they be on track with their regular, public school peers? And I'm not sure how, for me anyway, how important of a concern that is. I mean, because it's an alternative approach to education, and alternative approaches, yield alternative outcomes. It doesn't mean that the outcome's going to be a bad one. Maybe they won't remember something about some nuance of chemistry from sophomore year in high school or something, but who does? Unless you're a chemist. And I think my thought is that with child-led learning, home-based education, which is hardly ever at home, as we've talked about in many cases, children will gravitate towards the things that they're very interested in, and with great passion and curiosity, far more than perhaps children who are asked to sit still in a desk for the particular lesson of the subject for that 45 minutes, one right after the next. And they become almost like experts in things that may not be necessarily. I think experts in things that have real-world value, but may not be particularly valued in a school setting at a particular time in the path that has been prescribed for them. You know what I mean? So for us, for Chris and I and our family, I think my ultimate goal, and probably for many parents, the ultimate goal for their children is that they're happy ultimately, you know, as adults, and they're well adjusted. You know, hopefully, well, gainfully employed, right? But you know what I mean. So, and I think that will bear out for any family who makes the commitment to homeschool. Right? So.
And I think that's what it is. I mean, homeschooling is legal in all 50 states, and other states, like you were saying, you know, they have different regulations or different rules. Illinois is one of the least strict of states out there. But I think anyone can do it if they have the desire to do it. So, I mean, I don't think you don't need a teaching degree to teach your children. You learn with them, and you learn and you figure it out, and you have a desire and a passion, and you want to be around your children, so you're able to do it. So
It's pretty cool because you get to learn all kinds of things with your kids.
Right.
Which is kind of neat.
And they teach you so much too.
When you look at
I mean-
homeschooling, it's more of individualized learning plan as opposed to a one-size-fits-all mentality,
Right.
which is what the public school is. I mean, you have to educate in masses with funding and everything else today. You know, the classrooms are getting larger. You have a teacher, there's no one there to help you. So you have to teach to 30, 35, 40 kids the same way. That would be like everyone in this room, okay, we're all going out to eat. Everyone gets a deep dish, pepperoni pizza. We're vegetarians, and that's not going to work. And we all have to drink 2% milk. That's your choice, that's it. And that's what school is. Basically, everyone being catered to directly the same way. There's no individualized learning plan, which is what homeschooling does. So everyone, if you went to the public school system, you probably had the kid that was, you know, the class clown, or if you're in AP classes, they're in general classes. Maybe they could have benefited from homeschooling. There could have been, you know, some type of learning disability or something of that nature, but the school wasn't able to accommodate him or her, and that's where they ended up. And then they graduated school, and people look at grades, because that's how we're measured, right? What are your grades? Did you drop out of school?
Or actually,
Do you have a diploma?
gifted kids generally cannot do AP classes. So it's a myth that the smartest kids are in AP classes, because they're not. They can't, it's generally just added work, and they're like, why would I just do this extra work? And, you know, everybody you talk to whose kids are in AP classes now. That's where the difference is coming for homeschooling. And every kid in high school has to do community service. So going, you know, once a month to an animal shelter, it's not a big deal to colleges anymore, because it's a requirement now for graduating high school. So with homeschool, I mean, Morgan volunteers all the time. You know, she can go to Guatemala and volunteer if she wants to for a year, or, you know, there's just a lot more option for those kids. But highly gifted kids tend to drop out of school or get into drugs or something like that, because they cannot function that way. Do you mind if I say anything about, okay, about Megan?
Yeah.
Okay. Maureen's adopted. Maureen's birth parents both dropped out of high school, and both have IQs higher than Albert Einstein. Andrew's about 170. And they, you know, they were missed. And so perhaps knowing that and being able to watch for that kind of thing, I guess, in her from the outside almost, probably made us better prepared to see what was coming or see that type of thing. That's why I said just make sure that you learn your child and you know your child, because that's what's going to help you. And give them lots of toilet paper rolls and boxes and stuff like that, because they make amazing things out
You
of
don't know how
nothing.
many boxes are made into horse barns.
Horse barns, horse
Over the
jumps,
years,
yeah. Horses, you know.
Yeah.
Clay, all, you know.
You know, one thing you talked about, sort of a common belief on people's part, and it has a concern for me, and that can be for parents that have a very narrow perspective, and maybe, you know, I don't think my perspective is narrow, but it is, you know, and so, you know, how about children that are homeschooled in situations not like yours necessarily, but where people have a very narrow perspective and don't want their children really exposed to conflicting points of view? What about that?
We'll give you that.
So here comes the hard questions. I knew they were coming soon.
Well, and I'm not objecting to all homeschooling.
Right.
And anymore, but I hear you in a way saying, oh, public school. My son went to public school, he went to gifted programs, and he had to put up with stuff that he didn't like, and frankly, at home, he had to put up with stuff he didn't like sometimes
Well,
too, you know?
Just from my perspective, and I don't speak for the whole group, I mean, I support public schools, I just don't want my kid in one, right? You know what I mean? I mean, I pay a lot of money to my school district, and I don't do so begrudgingly. I mean, I'm happy to pay that money. But I hear your question, and I wasn't quite ready for that. What the one that I was thinking about, but I think might connect to this, because I didn't, honestly, only after talking with Rebecca did I really think that there might be that there was real criticism from the progressive groups of homeschooling, or some preconception that it's a real kind of a right-wing kind of thing. And the criticism that I came to understand through conversations and some reading was that the idea that homeschooling might undermine the common good of public education. Like you pull your kids out, and like this. I wrote it down. Like, this is how I understand the criticism. You tell me if it's on your radar at all. But the criticism that homeschooling denies the public interest by undermining common goods in two ways. First, it withdraws not only children but also social capital from public schools, to the detriment of the students remaining behind. Second, as an exit strategy, homeschooling undermines the ability of public education to improve and become more responsive as a democratic institution. Thus, homeschooling is not only a reaction, but also a cause of declining public schools. And that's from the Peabody Journal of Education, an article written by Chris Linsky. I disagree with that. I'm pretty sure Chris does as well. But is that a common criticism or concern?
I hadn't thought about it before, but
great, I put it out there now.
I think it is something to be questioned.
Well, I have right here, I listed a couple potential downsides to homeschooling. I looked at a couple different sites, and here were some things that I picked up, and I think it addresses what you're saying.
Okay.
Lack of interaction or socialization with others beyond their family members. May not receive a well-rounded education. Knowledge learned may be confined to the bias of the parent. Parents not qualified to teach could limit the scope of a child's knowledge. May miss the inspiration provided by the occasional great teacher. Everyone has that great teacher, a favorite teacher, but maybe, something clicked and, wow, without the teacher, I never would have gotten there. They were inspirational. Maybe you might miss the advantage of learning in a school setting. You're going to miss camaraderie with colleagues or classmates your own age. Those could be some of the things that might be perceived as downsides to homeschooling, and it might not work for everyone, but it's working for us.
And I think like anything. I think like an individual's public or private school experience could go really wrong, just like homeschooling could go really wrong. But I think it could go really well as well. So I believe, in response to the other criticism and perhaps these criticisms that we're hearing of homeschooling, that regardless of that, I believe in any family's choice to homeschool. I think that should be protected and should be legal. I think it's a fundamental right and responsibility with regard to for those who want to do it, but with regard to possibly undermining the public good of the common good of public education, I think it supersedes notions of the public good, because homeschooling, at least the way that we pursue it, is communal. It's based on community interaction. It's based on connecting with other families, working with other cooperative groups, families who also like to homeschool, getting our children out into the community to interact with people of all ages and genders or what have you. And I think some people who say that homeschooling might undermine the public good is saying, well, you're pulling your kid out and it's somehow weakening the possibility of a stronger public school. But I don't think to say that I shall not, I shall not be sacrificed is not the same as saying I shall not serve. You don't have to feel like you have to sacrifice your kids for the greater good in a system that you might personally disagree with. I think you could still serve to make these improvements in the community because most homeschool children, at least the ones I know, are in the community and they're working hard and they're interacting and they're building the common good. So that's kind of how I see it. I think homeschooling can become very quickly political and ideological and all of that, why we do it, why we don't do it. And education in general can become like that. But that's really never been the reasons. We try very hard not to make it ideological. but rather to make it a choice for our family and one that's rooted in our community.
One other thing. The only reason we pulled Morgan is because there are 7 multiple intelligences. The public school teaches to 2. I mean, they will tell you that. They only teach to 2.
It says 7, what did you say?
They're called multiple intelligences,
Oh, okay,
and it's the
gotcha.
way there's kinesthetic, naturalistic, interpersonal, linguistic. And I mean, they know they only teach to 2. So if you have a child that doesn't fit those 2, they really, honestly, can't really accommodate them, and they get left behind or left looking weird, you know, like, oh, so, and I would say, like, Morgan was working for her horse lessons, mucking stalls and stuff by 10. You know, she worked at an organic farm in the summers for 3 years. So I think the work ethic they're getting, I think the group that, to me, you were talking about, is the evangelical, I don't want my kids to learn anything about evolution. And that's why I don't want them to go to school.
But you can get that
And
in
that's
some
huge.
schools.
But you,
Texas.
yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say in some southern states, they
Right.
have that in some of the
Sorry.
schools where they
Right.
teach.
Well, and a lot of the textbooks are coming out
What
of
are y'all talking
Texas.
about?
Right? A lot of the textbooks are coming out of Texas.
Right,
where all
right.
that stuff is being,
But I think,
history is being.
maybe to your point, I would, my experience is somewhat in contrast to some of the folks up here in terms of, I was, when Jennifer asked me, well, what do you think about homeschooling? Well, my flip response says, well, there's so many ways we can ruin our children, why not that one? So we would try it out, so we decided we would try it out from year to year and see how it went. And I have and always, and continue to be very concerned about, are we getting them where they need to go? Because at the end of the day, they will have to get back into the stream, they will have to take the ACT, they will go to college, potentially, or whatever, but they will get back kind of into, they're out of your control and, you know, kind of your influence. And so for me, it's always been on my mind. And we've had many debates about that, like, how are they progressing? But I do value one of the things that you don't know when you're not teaching children up front. You don't realize or can really appreciate the differences that they have in how their learning styles and the kinds of things you learn. And so for sure, the ability to shape their own education in the way that tailored to them is hugely valuable. But I'm very much always concerned, like, well, I'm personally concerned, like, where do they sit kind of relative to everybody else? And at the end of the day, I feel an enormous responsibility that at the end of the day, when we release them out into the world, that we did the best by them, whether that you have one that's maybe a little bit more a quicker learner, that you help them achieve the most that they could achieve, or that at the end of the day, that yes, that they're ready to go, and they can be successful in school if that's what they would decide to do as a next step. And so for me, it's always been like that.
On your
A couple
point-
questions, yes.
On your point of multiple intelligences, just like to share my experience on
Sure.
that. My
Thank
parents
you.
didn't have the bandwidth to homeschool, was not possible. And though my dad had told me he would have liked to. But I wouldn't say I'm a genius, I'd say I'm above average intelligence, and I am one of those other intelligences. And you were saying being looked at as weird. That is such an understatement. I was bullied terribly, horribly, because of I didn't talk the way they did. I didn't think the way they did. So, yeah, I wish I could have been homeschooled. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
So someone who would say that that is political or ideological has never had an experience in the public schools that's so horrible that it affects your child's psyche and almost can't really be reversed. That's the point where you know, and every child does not fit in. It's like fitting a square peg into a round hole. And if your child does not fit into that, that school district makes you feel you're doing something wrong, or your kid is unusually, you know, having these issues, when there are very good reasons to do it. Very good reasons. And those experiences you have young as a child, you just, some kids bounce back, some kids that follows you. I can see why there would be very good reasons to homeschool. I don't see half or even a quarter of the parents getting ready to pull their kids out and homeschool. They're very specific situations, and they're all unique, but there's all very good reasons why to do it.
And people are always like, oh, I wish I could do that. I could never do that. They would drive me crazy.
We already drove them crazy.
One of the tips for homeschooling I have highlighted is be prepared to have tons of patience.
Yes. And no sleep.
I teach college also. I'll just say a couple things. I've taken a few courses at UIC and towards a PhD in education, and there was just one fact that kind of blew my mind. I can't forget it. Was that there haven't always been public schools in America. It used to be parochial, and then just a lot more just kind of like apprentice style stuff, working at in the fields and that kind of stuff at home, and a lot less education. And with the rise of public education, there immediately was an equal kind of explosion of youth gang activity. And the theory that was explaining this, which it just amazed me, is that what happens is you have kids that are essentially from the age of 6 to 18 being told, at this point in your life, you don't get to do anything real. You're waiting to be an adult and to participate in stuff. And then after that, maybe you can start to do real things. And so it kind of takes away the sense of purpose. And then, but if I'm threatening someone, if I'm going to physically harm them, now I have significance that I don't otherwise have, right? So I just wanted to say that. I teach. Chris has been sitting here watching me write numbers. I'm sure he's like, "What the heck are you doing, Mark?" I'm trying to like divide up my semester, and I'm always like trying to look for this silver bullet that's going to get it exactly right, because I have a couple classes that or so much time a week. How much time can I do this? And it just never feels like. It feels like a nightmare where you're like running, but the monster keeps getting closer and closer. And no matter what I do, I just feel like it's just not getting anywhere. And I know I'm getting better, but it doesn't feel that way. And the thing is, I mean, when you have a class full of students, and I tell them, I put it first thing in my syllabus, look, this is the shotgun approach, but this is the best thing you can do is seek out additional individual attention. I used to teach for a few years in New York City at a community college where there was just vastly much more funding, just more than anywhere in the country in terms of what they invest. And they would have a huge staff of tutors who would, so in pretty much every class you would have the professor and then two other, whether peer level or kind of master's level students, but would be sitting in and just offering their own perspective and co-teaching the writing labs. And when I tell people that, they're saying, oh, so it sounds like you're saying you just want to have smaller classes. No, that's not what I'm saying. When you have, even in the same size class, if you have 3 instructors in that class, that triples the opportunity for a student to be able to identify with one of those people. I've co-taught with, like a 70-year-old, really like original hippie woman, loved her, right? I've taught with a, guy that looks like a biker, tattoos all over, amazing guy. And so you have this variety of potential connection with someone. And why I'm saying that is, there's very few people that a kid could identify with better and that's going to know them better than their parents, right? And so it makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, if we're talking about the shotgun versus the apprentice individualized attention model, if parents are able to do this, I mean, it just, in every way, it just seems so much better.
And going back to your point about being bullied throughout school and stuff, I would think that one of the moments I've had in homeschooling didn't even involve my own children, but that like really sealed it in my heart, like knowing that I was doing the right thing. Was we were at a homeschool conference. It was up in St. Charles every year. They don't do it anymore because we have the co-ops are so abundant now. I think the style of doing that has kind of gone out. But at this conference, we had maybe been homeschooling for maybe 4 years at the time, and they did this talent show. And there's these kids there, some of them my own, like we're talented in a certain area, going up there, and there's dancers, and everybody's doing like showing off their thing, and they're doing great, and they're getting the applause. And then there was a girl there who, she probably was maybe some sort of learning disability, didn't speak very well. She got up on stage just as confident as any of those kids with the super talents, and she did her song, and she got the same applause from that crowd of her peers, of students, as if she, you know what I mean? Like, it was amazing to me, because I'm like, would this happen in public school? I don't think it would. I don't think it would. And seeing that and seeing the support, and my kids don't have a special need of their own in any way, and they don't really stand out in any way. They're pretty normal, average kids in every aspect. I still want that for them, and I do believe that it has helped every single one of them. And I see it mostly in my older two, because they're kind of coming to the end of the tunnel. You know, the other ones, they're still young. I don't know what will happen with them yet. But I see my older girls, and I see like their peer of teens that are out in the general population. And not that there aren't great and wonderful, talented kids going to public school that are going to do great things in life, because of course there are. But I feel it gives them an advantage to be themselves and to express themselves, you know, as they are who they are meant to be, without feeling a fear of judgment from their peers as much as if they were off at a public school every day, feeling like they have to fit in. And when I see it when kids that we've known that have been homeschooled their whole lives, and then they go to public school, they change. Not that they aren't still the same person deep down inside, but they change.
Or they come back home.
Or they come back.
Well, I'll tell you, there were days that there were weeks I wouldn't speak a word in school. So no, I couldn't express myself. I mean, there was incredible amounts of fear. So, yeah, you're absolutely right.
And going off what John was saying, I have taught some of these kids in our co-ops and stuff, and the kids just have such a great bond with each other, and they just have this support system that they encourage each other. So I had one student who is so afraid of standing up and speaking in public, but she will with her homeschooling friends, because she knows that they're not going to criticize her and that she's not going to get picked on or anything like that, and they'll support her with everything that she does. So, I mean, it is a great experience. The kids themselves, I mean, especially when they have a group of others that are similar to them and they know that support system is there, they really open up and they talk about everything, and it's a good fit. Yes?
I have a question regarding those instances that you guys have, experiences you guys have had. When they get into the working adult life, is there anything that you do to prepare them for the adversity they're going to see, because they're not going to have that support?
I think in a traditional public school classroom, if you're being chronically bullied, there's not a whole lot of escape routes. You know, you're kind of there. You got to kind of figure it out. But I think as an adult in a workplace with adversity that may seem extreme, you have a lot more capability to deal with, you know, like your bullying coworker or something, you know what I mean? So I don't think it's necessarily a fair comparison, because I feel like there is this much greater sense of being trapped when you're, you know, a child in a public school setting. And I don't think that means that homeschool kids don't learn how to deal with adversity. I mean, we all learn that. I mean, they're not cloistered at home, as we've been talking about.
Well, I would say, I mean, all the stuff that you do, that you experience with your public school friends, it's the same in the homeschool. Somebody's the punk or whatever. I mean, so it's not, I mean, it's not all rainbows. They go through a lot of the same stuff. I would say in some cases maybe not as extreme, but you know, so-and-so's not talking to me, they're friends with so-and-so. All that kind of stuff, it's really the same. It's just a different community or whatnot. But the thing that I have often thought about is, you know, they talked a lot about socialization. I've never worried about that ever. Because, you know, there's so many things, that clubs they're going to and their activities and whatever. I never worried about that. The thing that I always wondered about is that the majority of the population, right, comes from the public school experience and the dynamics that are involved in that, which then translate to the workplace to a certain degree. And what is it like if you don't really fundamentally have that experience? How would you orient yourself in that whole thing? What do they miss out on? What do they really not experience? I can't even answer the question. It's a little bit of an experiment to see how they will fare. But I mean, I do see a lot of the same things, but I don't really know, having gone to public school myself, what it would be like to kind of go in now when you go into college, and that's where everybody's coming from, and that same kind of, a lot of that still persists, right? Even as you go into college, people branch off into their little groups and all this kind of stuff. How is that going to work?
And plus, they're all involved in activity. It's not like everything we do is homeschool. Right. Like we homeschool. Oh, it's a public school dance lesson. No, thank you. No. I mean, they do their own things. Like, you know, my oldest, she's a musician. You know, she joins bands. She performs in front of huge crowds. I mean, she does all sorts of things. And if you've ever been in the music scene, I mean, it's a pretty diverse crowd, you know. She's got that, and my other, you know, the other, she's just the nature girl, and she works at the barn, she volunteers, and she meets, you know, all the girls she works with there, they're all public school. You know, and my other daughter, she goes to dance, so she's probably the only homeschooled kid in the things that they do. And there's always been activities and clubs, so it's really not like they don't get a taste of the outside world. It's there, it's just not the primary part of their life. So they get their confidence, and then they can go deal with everything else.
And like Jen just said, the confidence, in my experience, the homeschoolers that I know are not quiet about things. I mean, if they have a problem or an issue and stuff, they will speak out. And
Sometimes too much.
Yeah. But they're not afraid to approach an adult and say that they feel like something is wrong here. I mean, whereas I feel like some of the public schoolers that I know they're a little bit more timid about that because the teacher is the boss in the classroom. So they are supposed to stay quiet. At least in my experience with the homeschoolers that I know, they're willing to talk out if they don't feel like they're in agreement with you. So I feel like they have that confidence to be able to step up and say, hey, this is wrong, and I want to change this. So
Sure, I know some of the municipalities too will let homeschool students participate. They didn't at first, in the Minooka School District. They might be able to participate in physical education class 1 day a week, whenever it is, or maybe if there's a band class or something, they can partake in that. So there is places where you can actually get in and get some of that school experience as well, but not necessarily be an official school-going child.
Terry, one other thing about because we're in Shorewood, and in her school when she was there were 3 black children, maybe 2 Hispanic, no like Arab or Asian or anything. It was white, middle, upper class, and that's all she saw. So with going to Center for Gifted, and she's exposed to all ethnicities, it's so important to teach culture. We have the ability to teach a lot more culture, you know, and we choose to do that. But I think that when you get out in the real world, you're not just going to hang out with rich white people. So it gives the opportunity as you're growing up to understand everybody, to get along with everybody, you know. Because Warren was quiet, it actually was interesting. It's kind of stereotypical, but the people that she tended to go towards were like Asian, because they tended to be a little more quiet. You know, when we would be in a, like when she took Chinese, she was going to take French, but the kids were too loud, so she took Chinese. And it, you know, it gives her the opportunity to understand everybody, and I think be better suited as you grow up.
Yeah, hearing our conversation, I mean, I think, at least again, from what I know of homeschooling, from what I've observed, the children are, as we've heard, more confident because they find themselves mixing with people of often greater diversity, age diversity, as well as cultural diversity and everything else. And then because of that, when they find themselves in situations perhaps later on in a workplace that may be antagonistic or whatever, I think they're better prepared, honestly, because I think they've had a wider range of experiences and they have a greater sense of confidence because they're comfortable talking with all different kinds of people. And like I'm just kind of echoing things, but like what we've already heard, I mean, oftentimes homeschoolers haven't been told to sit down and be quiet. You know, I mean, perhaps some have, I don't know. I'm just speaking from my somewhat limited experience, but you know what I mean? They're not told that again and again and again, so they stand up for themselves.
Does anybody have questions for the kids at all?
Yeah.
They said they would answer.
Yeah, get the real truth now. I saw somebody scroll, save me.
If you prefer, you can always ask individually when we're done here. So if you don't want to say anything now, don't think that you have to ask a question now. There's always opportunities after we're done. For people that are going to leave before we do the vigil, you can speak then, or if you want to wait till afterwards, you can do that also.
Okay,
Well,
any last?
I got more questions.
You have more questions?
Yeah. Well, you roll.
Okay, but keep them short because we do have to wrap up here soon because we got people waiting for the vigil out here. We're running a little bit late. But 1 or 2 more questions and then I think we're have to
I
wrap
guess
up.
it's pertaining to, so you guys, terms of full ages.
Yeah.
You guys teach them all the same thing at the same time, or, you know, do you break it out and?
We really wing it a lot. No,
Well, the thing is, we have different programs for each of us. We do a lot of online school. They're not like sitting with us at a table teaching us stuff like all together.
but there are families that do.
Well, there are, but we don't.
Yeah, the older ones have become very independent and like, you know, they get a lot out of their co-ops, they do their classes with others there. And at home, they do a lot of, like she's doing an online like English course right now. And, you know, they do that kind of stuff and it's all individual. I sit with them a lot more when they're like this age, you know, because they're younger, they need more guidance, they need more, you know, with them it's more like I have to make sure that they stay on track and then they come to us if they have a question or a problem about something that they need to have clarified. But what's nice is they have become very independent, so I know when they're in college they will do well because they're used to that. We don't coddle them very much. If I had to coddle them too much, I probably would not homeschool them, to be honest. It would be too hard. And homeschooling, like for us, it's not something that like we do, it's just kind of our lifestyle. And it's grown and it's changed as throughout the years. Like the very first day for us, you know, we had an extra bedroom at the house because I only had 3 kids at the time. And we had our classroom and we did the first day and that lasted literally, I'm not kidding you, like 3 months. And like, okay, if I'm going to reproduce the public school classroom in this house, it's not gonna work. It's not, because why would I do that? This is not the program I was intending. So it just changes as we go, and some things they learn together, you know,
Yeah, like science stuff we like to do together.
They still, yeah. And so if it pertains for them to do things together, we do. But if not, then they kind of do their own thing. Because obviously for math, they're all very different, you know. But we do a lot of stuff as a family. You know, we spent a couple months in Europe and. You know, they got to do, you know, because he got sent there for work and it was like August and he had to go for 3 months and it's like, hey, well, you guys can come with. And we're like, okay.
Brought our school stuff and we went.
And we went to, yeah, so we lived in Switzerland for a couple of months and they got to travel to, we went to Germany and Austria and Italy and Spain and London and Paris and, you know, when they should have been in school. But, you know, we got to go and we did a lot of history museums there. So, you know, I think when it is your sole responsibility, like he said, that you know that if you fail, you've like really failed. You know, it is a sense of responsibility. So you go extra in trying to find opportunities for them to learn, and versus like, not that you wouldn't do that as a public school, you know, family, but you may feel more like, oh, I can rely on that they're getting what they need elsewhere. Well, we know they're not. It's us or nothing, so we make sure that we incorporate it into our lifestyle.
The last question before we wrap up. Burning desire to, okay.
This is a tangential issue, and I don't think it's going to go into a discussion now because I don't think it could be. But, you know, I mean, you've painted a very glowing picture of all the advantages. And I think about in our schools, the families that cannot afford to do that, or the children who really need that kind of individualized attention and don't get it, and you know, all I think about, it's a problem that we need to deal with. How do we make our public education more responsive to the needs of our children? And I know that's not something for you to answer now, but I just think that's something that we as a group might want to address at some point.
All right, well, there's many more questions we could answer, and this conversation could go on a long time. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much.
Real quick, and you know, just if anybody is looking for a kitty, I'm sorry. We have 7 cats, and we have this orange kitty that somebody dumped. He's right around a year. I've got his shots. I'm waiting to neuter him. He cannot come in my house. I have a blind kitty. I have 2 cats that hate each other that are locked up at 12 hours, and I have 7 cats. I can't take him in. We're feeding him. I will pay for his food. He's so loving. I have pictures. If anybody's interested in a kitty,
We'll talk.
okay. His name is. Sorry.